Hello, this is Dr. Divya Pradhan once again, and we continue on with our last presentation on animals and how they evolved, particularly the invertebrates, the forms without a vertebral column. So we continue with phylum Nematihelminthes or Nematoda. We call them nematodes, but of course the phylum is Nematoda. The nemati means round, helminths worms. So these are the round worms. They're non-segmented and extremely plentiful. So why are we discussing them here? Well, don't forget that we had divided animals into protostomes and deuterostomes, right? And the protostomes, in protostomes, we had subdivided them. So here was the ecdiozoa. So the ecdiozoan is the nematodes and the arthropods, because remember they molt. Because they're able to molt or to shed that outer covering, that's why they belong to this group. So we are discussing the ecdiozoan, the nematodes. So the characteristics of nematodes is, of course, they are roundworms, but they are non-segmented, so no segments. So they are non-segmented. They do not have any partitions. They are not divided. The body is not divided into different segments. Non-segmented. They are pseudo-coelomate because they don't have a true body coelom. Coelomate, they have a pseudocoelom. And of course, they have a bilateral symmetry. Remember, that means their body can be divided into right and left. Very simple body plan. No definite head. So this is not a head, if that's what you're thinking. There's no defined head. And they have a very, very simple digestive tube. Yes, they have a mouth and they have an anus. But if you're thinking very complex digestive organs associated, well, you're not going to find them. Okay, so here they occur everywhere. But the essential thing about nematihelminths or the nematodes is that they are free living and parasitic. It's the parasites that are of extreme medical importance to us. So they are the parasitic forms are the ones that we are interested in. So the first one that we have is Ascaris. So Ascaris, remember, it's a scientific name, so you're going to write it Ascaris. SP. So here the humans become infected when they ingest the eggs. And incubation or development takes place in the lungs. So often you see that the children cough up or they sneeze out worms. Well, we are talking about Ascaris. Because they develop in the lungs, the child will end up with health problems, especially lung related, like for example pneumonia, or for example pleurisy, so on and so forth. All right, the other roundworms that we are interested in, some of the roundworms that I would like to discuss is Trichinella. The disease is called trichinosis, and as you can see, the worm will encysted in the muscles, particularly very, very painful. It can infect also dogs and other animals where movement will be very difficult and often mistaken for arthritis. It's not arthritis. Elephantiasis, where the legs become, or usually the arms become like an elephant. That's why elephantiasis. This is because of a worm, a filarial worm. And this worm is spread, guess what? By the bite of a mosquito. So here there are two hosts. The primary host is of course human, and the secondary host is a mosquito. So the mosquito bites a human being and spreads the filarial worm. The worm will block lymph circulation and you'll end up with massive swelling. Of course, then is the pinworm. The pinworm and here's the pinworm. So this is the pinworm, and as you can see, the adult female lays the eggs around the anus, where in the wee hours of the morning when you are in deep sleep. And of course the eggs hatch. As you can see, these larvae, they hatch and they start digging into the anus. Well, what happens? The child will scratch in his sleep or her sleep, and of course will put the fingers in the mouth, so you will have constant circulation of the life cycle of the pinworm. Here's the hookworm. The mouth has hook-like parts. That's the why it's called hookworm. So when you're walking bare feet, it will inject and will enter, of course, the body parts. The next phylum, Arthropoda. Arthro means jointed. So arthro comes from the word jointed, pod means appendages. So phylum Arthropoda extremely diverse, and there are so many species, as many as 30 million forms. What are the characteristics of arthropods? Like I said, the first characteristic is, of course, they have jointed appendages. Well, they have an exoskeleton. Remember, we talked about molting, remember? So here they have an exoskeleton. That exoskeleton is made up of chitin. And then, of course, the body is segmented. They have the bodies divided, and this is not only on the outside, but there are partitions inside the body. They have a very well developed, they are more advanced, they have a well developed nervous system, and of course they have adaptation of respiratory system. Some of them have gills, some of them have tracheae, and some of them have very delicate pipes, and these are called spiracles. We'll talk about that later. And they have very reduced competition through a process which is important, and that is metamorphosis. So metamorphosis is where typically you see in the butterfly, you have the egg, you have the larva, then you have the pupa, and then you have of course the adult butterfly. Here is the larva. The larva is in the form of a caterpillar, and then you have the pupa. You're aware of this. And because of metamorphosis, meta means big, morph means change. So big changes will allow reduced competition, because whatever the butterfly eats is not eaten by the larva. Arthropods are subdivided, and the first class we talk about are the crustaceans. The crustaceans are mostly marine, and you know them as crabs, shrimps, the crayfish, or also called the crawfish. And basically the head bears compound eyes. There are 5 pairs of appendages. This is a typical feature of the crustacean. The next are the centipede and the millipede. The centipede, the difference between centipede and millipede, centipede have pairs of appendages on every segment. Millipede has 2 pairs of appendages per segment. So of course millipede has more appendages. The next class are the arachnids. You know them as spiders, as scorpions, ticks, mites, and crabs. Spiders have a very narrow waist that separates the structure called cephalothorax or cephalothorax. The head and the thorax are fused. So cephalothorax, and it has 4 pairs of legs. From the rest of the body, that's the abdomen. So the body in arachnid, the head and the thorax are fused. Cephalothorax, and the abdomen is separate. Scorpions, of course, are the oldest terrestrial arthropods. Ticks and mites are parasites, you know them. So, and then finally, the horseshoe crab use the pair of appendages for feeding and defense. So you know, you're aware of these arachnids. And last but not the least, the largest of the largest group are the insects, where over 1 million species that are adapted to live actively on land. So the body is divided into head, thorax, and abdomen. So here is the head, thorax, and abdomen. And of course they have various mouth parts. They have various mouth parts which are adapted for different functions. For example, the mandible is adapted, of course, for cutting and the leaves, and then of course they have the tongue-like structure called the labium. And then of course they have two pairs So they have two pairs of wings. Which help them survive and of course reproduce. The last but not the least is phylum Echinodermata. Echino means spiny, derm means skin. So echinoderms, now here, remember if I told, if you remember, I had said we start from the most primitive, that is asymmetry, as in asymmetrical forms, remember, as in sponges, and then we have the radial symmetry, and then we have the bilateral symmetry, right? So primitive, more advanced, and the most advanced. Now we are saying that phylum Echinodermata, we are coming to the top of the ladder and we are saying phylum Echinodermata, they have radial symmetry in adults. Well, what happened? This is oxymoron. I'm just saying the opposite. No, I'm not. I'm saying as adults they have bilaterals, they have radial symmetry, yes. In the larval form they have bilateral symmetry. So keep this in mind, that they have something which is called a regressive evolution. They are advanced, the larvae have bilateral symmetry, but adults have radial symmetry, okay? The echinoderms, of course, they lack all the coded features. They are, of course, related to them as deuterostomes. So the adults do not have a head. So what are the characteristics? The adults do not, the adults have radial symmetry. 2, they do not have head, they do not have a brain, so no head, no brain, and no segmentation. So no head, no brain, no segmentation. Of course, all these features are found in the larval form. Nervous system, the nervous system consists of a ring, and this is arranged around the mouth. These are nerves, and they extend outwards to each arm radially. And locomotion, of course, is by water vascular system. They pump water through the tube feet, which literally look like a tube feet, like this. So water is pumped in through tube feet like structure. And as the water is pumped in, needless to say, that they are going to filter the food. Also, the water vascular system allows them not only to exchange gases, food, but also to move from place to place. They do not have any complex respiratory system or circulatory system. Fluids within the coelomic cavity and water vascular system carry out these functions. And like I said, they feed on organic matter that comes in with the water as the water is being circulated. They prey on crustaceans, mollusks, and other invertebrates. I think this is the last of our slide, and with this we come to the end of our presentation on invertebrates. If there are any questions or concerns, please stop by, please ask me. I thank you for giving me your time and attention.